I'm Richard Wilkinson, Associate Vice Chancellor for HR and Organization Development here. And welcome to our celebration of our student employee workforce. Without you, this place would grind to a halt. So we really want to acknowledge the contribution you're making to UW Tacoma. Part of that celebration not only involves food, but this very unusual thing called Fail Forward. And our panelists here, Carolyn West and Tom Cooljam, will be talking about what it means to fail forward in their careers. But first, we'll have a welcome from Joe Lawless, Assistant Chancellor for Strategy and Assessment.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I'm playing the role of Joe today, and apparently I'm talking now, right? So my name's Joe Lawless. I'm the Assistant Chancellor for Strategy and Assessment. What I get to do on this campus is work on the implementation and assessment of our strategic plan. What is this campus doing moving forward? And one of the things that we do in that is it's called the Strategic Initiative Fund, where we fund programs across campus that are having an impact on the pillars of our strategic plan. So can anyone name the six pillars of the plan? Does anyone want to cheat and look at them on the back wall there? That was a test where the answers were posted on the wall. So students, communities, scholarship, equity, culture, and growth. And we have a lot of initiatives across campus to try to support those things and move us forward. One of the SIF funds is this that we funded this round is this lunch to recognize our student employees. On this campus, we have, in terms of people working here, it's broken into about thirds. A third faculty, a third staff, and a third student employees. So you have a significant impact on this campus and our ability to carry out our strategic plan. Hopefully, your working here has a significant impact on you as well. I was thinking back about my experience in undergrad, and I was a first-generation college student, and I went to Seattle U and had no idea what I was doing, and I started working in the cafeteria. I was a short-order cook, and so if anyone needs any eggs made, I'm your man. And I worked there for a while, and I had no idea what this work-study thing was. It kind of showed up on my financial aid, and it said work-study, and one day I wandered into this old building on the campus. It was probably built in like the 1800s, and it was one of those buildings that you couldn't sneak up on anyone, because as you walked, it was and I remember I have this memory of, and this was a long time ago, walking up these stairs, and at that time, computers didn't exist, so the work-study jobs were all posted on the wall on cards. And I took a work-study job with there weren't a lot of on-campus jobs on that campus, but there were a lot with the city of Seattle. So I worked for the fire chief in his office and got a chance to work on a couple of projects with him studying safety equipment in the fire department. And then the next year I took a job with the land use department and worked on a project with building permits and the historical building permits. I got to work in the basement of City Hall, and it was dusty. But what I got out of that is what I call the INSs. Experience. I got the experience that I needed to be able to gain the confidence that I needed to move forward. And hopefully, I'm hoping for you that what you get out of your work here on campus is the experience to gain the confidence to be successful as you move out of here. So on behalf of the campus and the Chancellor's Office, I'd just like to say thank you for the hard work that you do in helping us to be such a great place to study and work. So.
Thank you, Joe. So, all right. So we have something very special for you. I believe this is the first time this kind of panel has been here on the UW Tacoma campus, and it's called Fail Forward. And it comes from the idea of it comes from the UW Resilience Lab, and the purpose of the UW Resilience Lab is to build strength for the road ahead. Build strength for the road ahead for students specifically, to help you navigate both college life and life after college in a way that's resilient and helps you bounce back from challenges and setbacks that you face. This is the definition of the Fail Forward panel, and what Carolyn and Tom are going to be talking about. Prominent leaders share personal stories of failures and setbacks, and then discuss how those experiences have shaped them. So I have to say, Tom and Carolyn were very gracious in their willingness to share their fumbles and stumbles with you. Part of it is to just underscore the challenge that everyone faces in terms of being gentle with yourself, recognizing if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world, and you're not a terrible person because of it. One of the things that the UW Resilience Lab shares is that we typically are kinder to others than we are to ourselves. And hopefully out of this experience, you'll start to be gentle with yourself as you would be with a friend who's going through a difficult time. I invited Carol and Tom to do this because both of them are successful in their own right. You have some biographical information there. Dr. West was a founding faculty here in the psychology department. Tom has been successful in a variety of settings as a veteran, as a banker, and as an entrepreneur. And for all of us in our journeys, there's been ups and downs, and they'll be talking about some of that. 18% of us are kind of neutral. We're kind of treat ourselves and others kind of in an equal fashion, and 2% treat ourselves with more kindness than others. So I want you to be conscious of this, and the objective here is to both kind of entertain you with some good stories, but also to help you think more, be gentle with yourself, like I said, as you would with a friend. This is my own journey to share with you. So I've been working 46 years I've been working. I'm about to retire. Actually, I'm retiring next month. So it's really fun for me to be here as kind of one of the last kind of cool events that we get to do. But you can see here, this is my journey that involves some setbacks, getting dumped, being laid off, quitting. There was a poker game involved in there somewhere that had a big impact on my life. So it's not a straight line, let me put it that way. Okay. Anyway, if you have questions about any of these images, you can ask me later. So we're going to do it. There's 3 steps to this process. We're going to hear from Dr. West first, then we'll hear from Tom Kuljam, and then we'll open it up for questions. But I have a specific process I want to follow when we get to the Q&A part, so just be prepared. Carolyn and Tom will each talk for 10 minutes, and then you'll be able to discuss this at your table and ask them some questions about their journeys. Okay, are we ready to roll? Okay, so we're going to start this with this very cool video, and then Dr. West is going to take it from there.
Precious Lord, take my hand. I am the great-granddaughter and granddaughter of sharecroppers. They were proud and hardworking people who planted and harvested rows and rows of cotton in the rich Arkansas soil. They were sustained by their faith and their family. I'm the granddaughter of Moselle Stevenson. Gospel music, Mahalia Jackson, Precious Lord, Take My Hand. Grandma Moselle hummed softly as she stirred her big pot of collard greens, sweet potato pies cooling on the counter, big fancy hats that the church mothers call Sunday crowns, Me in my patent leather shoes, holding Grandma's hand as we went to church. Grandma left Arkansas on a segregated railroad car and moved to St. Louis. She grew rows and rows of roses in our stately Victorian home that was more than 100 years old. In me, she cultivated a fierce independence and a deep desire for knowledge. She was my superhero and protector. She was strong. She ended every conversation with, "Be sweet, baby." During the week, she worked at a hospital, transporting patients and helping in the operating recovery room. I wanted to help people too. I wanted to teach my grandpa George to read and write. I wanted to understand why he was so sad and why being a Black man in America made him so angry, that he hurt Grandma Moselle, my mother, and me. I left the old Victorian house in St. Louis to go to school. Then the call came. It was cancer. The last night, friends and 3 generations of family members crowded into her bedroom. In the closet, her big fancy hats. I held her hand. She quietly passed with grace and dignity as she had lived. There was a whirlwind of activity as we prepared for her homegoing services. Grandma wore a white suit and a white hat. Her casket was light heavenly blue, gospel music, Mahalia Jackson, "Precious Lord, take my hand. I'm tired, I'm weak, I'm alone. Through the storm, through the night, lead me to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home." We sang and we sang. At home, a big pot of collard greens on the stove, sweet potato pies cooling on the counter. Now I'm a university professor. I plant and harvest ideals and books. I write about domestic violence, sexual assault, and intergenerational trauma. I try to understand how my grandma Moselle was so resilient and why my grandpa George was so sad. I stay grounded. I'm the great-granddaughter and granddaughter of sharecroppers.
Okay. Carolyn, take it away.
All right. So I was 20 years old, and I was a graduate student, and I was harboring this deep desire to be a university professor. And I went and I talked to one of the other professors in the program, and she wanted to speak to me. And she said to me, "You have an attitude problem. And by the way, this paper you just wrote was terrible." So words matter, and they matter a lot when they come from people that you really admire and who are in positions of power and authority. So deciding how to deal with that feedback was really interesting. So what I did is I decided to embrace my attitude problem, and I actually got a mug that said, "I love my attitude problem," and I carried this throughout graduate school. So it was like no question about what that was. And the attitude problem part just sort of continued to get worse, actually. And when I had an experience, and this was before Me Too was a thing and sexual harassment was a thing, and I had this experience on campus, and I complained about it, and of course the university did nothing. And having a professional attitude problem, I ended up filing a formal complaint with the university, which culminated in a lawsuit against the university. And just here's a tip too: they don't like it when you're trying to get a PhD and you're suing them. That usually doesn't go over so well. And I decided that I would always use my voice to continue to talk about sexual assault, sexual harassment, and I sort of built on that experience. And I also promised myself that I would continue my writing and still continue to work on my writing. So I had 1 year left in the program. And I went to talk to the director of the program, and she looked at me and she said, I don't think you can finish this program. And I said, okay, but I've collected all the data for my dissertation. And she said, well, that's fine, but you need to write your dissertation. You need to analyze the data, write the dissertation, defend the dissertation, make the changes that need to be made, and you need to do all that successfully in a year. And by the way, you're moving to Indiana next month to move to Notre Dame and finish a full-time internship that's joint site, where you'll work part of the time in the counseling center and part of the time in a psychiatric hospital in a Mennonite community. So nobody's ever been able to do that. Either you do your internship and you do all your clinical work, but you're so busy doing that, there's no way you can finish your dissertation successfully. But I gotta finish. Well, yeah, and if you don't finish at the end of this year, we're gonna kick you out. It's an 8-year program. And since you spent so much time suing us, you only have a year to finish. Good luck. So fear of failure can help you learn to operate with no sleep. So the fear of failure of spending that many years working on a PhD and not getting it was enough to terrorize me pretty sufficiently. So what I would do is I'd work all week, then I'd get in my car at 5 o'clock on usually Friday, drive back to St. Louis, which was about 6 hours, work on my dissertation, and then Sunday morning, get in my car, drive back from St. Louis, back to Indiana, and start that process again. So I graduated, and I was really happy to graduate, and they were really, really happy for me to leave. And here's what I learned about failure along the way. Actually, I'm intimately familiar with failure. One of the most important lessons that I want to leave you with is this. The first lesson is failure is not fatal. Can you say that with me? Failure is not fatal. It is just not. What I learned, one thing I wish I had known when that professor told me that that paper was terrible, okay, yeah, she was right. But here's a secret. They all start off terrible. They just do. And that is just part of the process. I have so many students from teaching for 30 years are so fearful of failure and that things won't go well, they almost don't try. And so I learned from that failure is not fatal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to suck less than you did yesterday. That's the goal. And that's a win-win for everybody. So failure is not fatal, but like with every rule, there is an exception. Skydiving. Okay, so I was having some fearful moments some time ago, and I thought, well, what am I most fearful of? Well, falling. So I'll go skydiving, and so I'll jump out of a plane at 13,000, well, it was like 10,500 square feet, falling down at about 10,000 feet. And that's the only time you don't want things to end badly. So generally, failure is just not fatal. And so that's always been a good message for me. The second message I've learned is this: love it, lead it, or leave it. Can you say that? Love it, lead it, or leave it. So in other words, what I learned is that if I'm not happy with my life, either I'm focused too much on fear and I'm living in the past, or I'm so afraid of fear I'm living in the future too much and afraid of failure that hasn't happened. So what I've learned is to love it, lead it, or leave it. Either find some way in the moment to be happy with where I am, as less than perfect as it is, lead it by taking a leadership role and making the changes that I can make, or leave it, either stop stressing about it because I can't change it, or leave the situation because it's time to move on. And the third lesson I learned about failure is enjoy the journey. Just enjoy the journey. After I got the degree, I got really depressed, and I realized I'm spending too much time focusing on the next goal and the next goal. So I've got the degree, and I thought, okay, I need a job as a university professor. So I got that job, and then now I need to get tenure and promotion. And then I discovered I was spending so much of my time chasing the next thing, the next goal, the next accomplishment, and I wasn't enjoying that. So now I live my life as if it's a long repositioning cruise. That not just running from one goal to the next, but here I am in Alaska, and if I'm going to reposition myself to the Bahamas, how am I going to do that? How do I take my time and enjoy that journey? What can I learn differently? What can I do differently? Not focusing so much on the outcome. So just enjoying the journey. And the last thing, so 3 goals, 3 things. Failure is not fatal. Love it, lead it or lead it. And the third thing, probably, and enjoy the journey. So what I'll tell you is a quote that will always stick with me, and I hope you remember this too. Samuel Beckett, he was an author, and what he said, have you ever tried? You ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. Fail better.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next up, Tom Coolchamp.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm gonna work backwards. So you guys, see my accomplishments. So 20 years military, 25 years and going in the finance banking industry. Started multiple businesses. Board of directors, probably one of the finest financial institution in the Northwest. Was nominated and confirmed by the executive director of Pierce County to be on his advisory board. I'm a family man. People say I do a lot of great things, but I'm not. You guys hear the stories, but you don't understand the journey. We all have journeys. So here's my journey. I immigrated over here when I was 7 or 10 years old. Basically, I'm gonna get emotional because it's really, it touches me real hard. So I immigrated over here when I was 7 or 10 years old from Vietnam. My stepfather adopted us. I'm not Vietnamese, I'm Thai. So he brought us from a war-torn country. Lived in Texas, Oklahoma, California, back here, and all over the country. This is what I remember from being my childhood. Ching Chong Chinaman, sitting on a fence, trying to make a buck out of 15 cents. I got on a bus, I got spat on in Oklahoma. Then we were poor, I couldn't afford to buy lunch. So they took me and my brother and took us into a room to eat by ourselves. This is back in the 70s, people. They still do this. Racism is real, but one thing I've learned, that it scarred me because I was a failure. I had funny eyes, I had funny hair, I ate funny food. My name was different. My name wasn't Thomas or Tom, it was Surya. My brother's name was Swirichai. And I knew exactly when the teacher was calling on me because they didn't know how to pronounce my name. Just imagine, can you imagine that as a child? It was awful. But you know what? The only word I knew was yes, yes, yes. So I remember this vividly. I got up, I went outside to play with my brother. I just remember this, let's just call him a redneck. Let's be real about this. He says, hey boy, hey Chinaman, you know karate? Yes, yes, yes. He proceeds to jump off the fence and beat the living crap out of me. I went home crying. My mom saw me, and she said, what happened? I told her. And you know what she said? She beat the crap out of me again. She goes, don't you ever come home crying again like that. From that day forward, I never lost a fight. Until today, if you guys know me, you come at me, I'm gonna come at you harder, okay? So basically, failure is normal. So when you were growing up, it's psychological. So I couldn't read, I couldn't write, but I knew enough to survive. So my mom and I would go grocery shopping, and I would have to write checks for her. So how many immigrants do we have here? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? You feel my pain. I can tell you this, you will survive, you will become better. But here's the thing, you don't have time to experiment with things. You have to make it happen now, right? You understand, you're shaking your head, you understand there's no time for experimenting here. It's about survival. A lot of people here are third, fourth generation of college graduates. I had no idea what college meant. I just went to college because that's the way the military taught you to do, is go to college and do this. But one thing I can tell you this, is that all the failures I had, but mostly it was a lot of things, because when you were an immigrant, you try to forget all these bad things. I mean, I can tell you a whole bunch, you know, but the failure was my psychological failure of I wasn't good enough for anything. And here's a true story, senior trip. We were going to an overnight trip. We're standing in line for breakfast. Hey, Johnny, where are you going? Well, where are you gonna go to college, Johnny? I'm gonna go to Notre Dame. Oh, Polly, where are you going? Oh, I'm gonna go to University of Washington. Here's Tom. Hey, Steve, where are you going to college? They bypassed me. Use that experience right there. Use that experience right there to have a freaking chip on your shoulder to fight. Whether you're first generation or fourth generation, you gotta find something that you can think that you can go forward and fight, because every day is a fight, it's not linear. And find something within you, that your skill sets, that you can take over and create something within your world, create your own little empire. Because everything else is not just noise. Because society is always coming at you. You're not smart enough, you're not skinny enough, you don't have good hair, your name's funny, you got funny teeth. I've been there, people. But look at me now. I'm teaching at a university. Really? Come on. You know what my GPA was? A cumulative GPA? I was so scared to show everybody because society has labeled me as being stupid. My GPA when I graduated from college was 2.08. I'm standing in front of you now on a board of directors, open multiple companies. One of my clients is Los Angeles County. I fly there once a month, and I consult with them. They pay me about $300 an hour. You can look because it's all public record, $300 an hour for a 2.0 GPA to $300 an hour and teaching it at a university. If a guy like me with below average intelligence can do this, above average intelligence like every one of you here, you can definitely excel in anything you do. I thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. I wish I could talk more, but you guys want to talk more, I'm up at the vibe, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you very, very much. And by the way, I do want to mention, speaking of the Vibe, which is on the 3rd floor of the Tioga Library building, every Thursday morning, Tom has donuts. So just if you want to have a conversation, I would suggest Thursday morning, donut morning at the Vibe. Okay, so I want you to do this. I do want to have some time for questions for our panelists. This is very powerful, and I thank you both very much for making yourself vulnerable to this audience. But I want you to think, I want you to, at your tables, I want you to do this. I want you to think privately and then pair up and then talk at the whole table. They use 4 things. What stands out for you from what you heard just now from Tom and Carolyn? How did this session make you feel about your own failures? What insights will you use going forward? And then what burning question do you have for Carolyn or Tom? Okay, so let's just take 3 minutes to have, think privately for a moment, these questions, and then let's just talk at your table. We can skip the second part. Just talk at your table about your answers to these 4 questions. And then at the end of about 3 or 4 minutes, I'll ask what questions you have for our panelists. So go ahead and talk. So, okay, if you would just kind of take a pause in your conversation. Let me go to the table with the large number of people, but right behind where Joe's sitting. Where are you? Yeah, don't look at you. Don't look behind. It's you people. You people. So, what burning question do you have for Tom or Carolyn?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they were through with me near the end. And so it took a couple years and just going through. And what I found is when you start using your voice in that way, other people start coming forward. So I gave radio and television interviews. I've written about this experience. If you go to my website, you go to my website, you can see me skydiving, which is, a bunch of my students have done that. It's drcarolynwest.com. And I've written articles about that experience. So it was myself and then other students during the lawsuit. We did successfully sue. The university decided to just settle out of court with us. And then I needed to move to Indiana, as I mentioned. So I bought a new car and I got personalized license plates that said "Go West." And I parked it in front of the campus every day until I left. They was done with me. But emotionally, it took a huge toll, though.
I have no idea what this sound is coming from. But anyway, next table, what's a question for Carolyn or Tom?
Maybe you have a question.
Or the back table.
Yes.
You're good.
What advice do you have for somebody who doesn't know exactly what they want to do, like specifically what they want to do after college, but they are really eager to get ahead and they don't want to waste time, like me?
I think in other people in this room, I would say, like I said, enjoy the journey. To go do some of everything and to see what works and what fits. I think for myself at least, when I'm fearful about something, it's really easy to get stuck and to do nothing, but do something. And then see where that takes you. And if that doesn't work, like I said, love it, lead it or leave it. If that part doesn't work, then try something else, and try something else, and try something else. And along the way, you meet people who could help give you ideals as well. But do something. Where people, I think, get stuck is when they do nothing because they don't know what to do next, but to just do something and see where that takes you.
I'd like to add on to that too. You have to understand that you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. okay? Because life isn't linear. You know, not like the higher education. You have a syllabus. This is when you take your midterms. This is when you have your class. This is when you graduate. This is when you enroll in another class. This is da 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 da. Life isn't like that. So what Carolyn's saying is enjoy the moment, get comfortable with the uncomfortable, embrace it. And also, momentum creates opportunity. It's like the flywheel, right? The more people you meet, the better off you're going to be. It isn't about your degree. Yeah, it's nice that you have it. You worked hard for it. You should be proud of it. But the reality of the real world is can you make me money or save me money, right? What value do you bring into my world, or vice versa? So embrace it and just go with it. Fight with a chip on your shoulder.
All right, thank you. How about this table here? A burning question.
Hello. I want to thank you both for your presentations. They both touched me. My question is, I am increasingly unsatisfied with sort of the floor of being an ally, just being not racist. I want to know how could I be the best ally I can be, in your opinion?
That's where the more failure comes in. For me, it was really important to be an ally for the gay, lesbian, queer community, because those were the people who really stood with me during my toughest times. And so I found part of being an ally is not something you do and you're done. You're always in the process of just doing better and like failing better. So being open when people call you out on your stuff and being willing to listen and then get back up and do it again. And to just understand that it's an ongoing process and it's going to be times of being vulnerable and being open and being fearful, but yet continuing to do it and understanding that one person doesn't fix it all, but you're a part of fixing whatever racism, sexism, whatever ism it is. And you just do your part a little bit every day. And don't worry so much about being perfect. Just be there. And I think people will value that.
Thank you. Tom, did you want to add anything? Yeah.
So how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. So I don't know how many, so being in the military, I don't know how many continents I've stepped my foot on. But one thing I know is this. Everybody, no matter what color, shape, size, or whatever, or religion, has the same thing they want in life. They want peace, they want love, they want joy. Okay, so if you can impact one person at a time, that will snowball. So just, if you learn how to eat other people's food, learn about their culture, learn all this stuff. I know kids who are being raised today, all they want to eat is hamburgers and french fries. They don't want to eat sushi, they don't want to eat any of that, but this world is becoming such a global economy that you will do yourself a disservice if you don't try those things, all right?
Okay, one last question and then we'll wrap up, right there. Deanna, do you have a mic for the... What's the best advice someone told you? Okay.
I don't know. Part of it is just believing in yourself. When I got the feedback about not being good enough and all that, deciding who I was going to listen to. Was I going to listen to those negative voices, or was I going to listen to my own internal sense and my own compass about where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be in my life, and follow that? So listening and trusting myself is probably some of the best advice that I got.
Yeah, that's good. But I agree with what Carolyn's saying. But I think part of this is too, you have to wake up in the morning with a mission and a purpose. You got to have a mission and a purpose. Develop some kind of discipline within your life. Go through the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. This pain of discipline only weighs ounces. Pain of regret weighs a ton. So do it.
Thank you for that question, because that lets me share with you one of the best pieces of advice. And it's some advice that I read, Henry David Thoreau speaking to us from 1854. The finest qualities of our nature, like the bloom on fruits, can be preserved only by the most delicate handling. yet we do not treat ourselves nor one another less tenderly. I read that book in the Japan Alps in 1972, and it had a huge impact on my life, and I will share that with you because that's part of your journey as well. I want to end with this from a UW-Tacoma grad, 2013 MBA, Raquel Timmons. She's a senior VP for planning and development at a development company. I love this quote. This was in a business magazine recently. What would you do differently in your career if you had it to do over? I would turn back a few chapters and enjoy the journey a bit more. You're getting a certain theme here, people, a certain theme. Mostly, I would have liked to have been more patient with myself. I also would have liked to grant myself a little more grace to evolve. So on that note, thank you very, very much. Go forth, study hard, continue to serve us and the students of UW-Tacoma, and I appreciate your being part of our first Fail Forward panel.
Yeah,
Thank you.
remember, fail better, fail better.